This is a pleasant surprise.
The release of a Kübelwagen is hardly a reason for modelers to rejoice in the streets. It isn't like there aren't many other options available, but join me for this build review of the new MENG Kübelwagen because I'd be very surprised if it didn't end up on your Santa list this year.
Well, let me check my list.
This is a build that wasn't remotely on my radar, but I was offered it as a review kit from the modelling news and figured it was something I could move through reasonably quickly, so I took the opportunity to give you all a look at what to expect. The parts of this one come across three main sprues. The floor of the Kübelwagen comes as a standalone piece with location points for the slatted timber deck to make up the floor of the vehicle. The engine block is presented with an excellent level of detail, however it only represents the underside of the components rather than a full engine assembly. The fabric textures in the seats are reasonably understated, but present nonetheless. The front and rear fender assemblies as well as the side walls are found on sprue C. The kit comes with 4 rifles for the storage rack found in the back seat, and there is a fine quality to elements like the rear view mirrors and the straps on the jerry cans. The sculpting for the fabric surfaces for the roof are convincing and organic looking, with the bracket assemblies moulded cleanly and in scale. The wheels come as a centre hub with the brake and drive detail on the reverse side and are completed with a vinyl tyre slipping over them. The clear parts for the windscreen and headlights could be some of the clearest clear I've seen, and the model comes with a small decal sheet. But like I say, what's the point of a review if you don't know how the thing builds? So let's get started and I'll talk you through some of my experiences with this build.
There's no time to waste!
Instructions are delivered across 22 steps, although I suspect that could have been reduced by including more assemblies for each step. The kit comes with 3 schemes, all from the North African campaign. The rear axle and engine components snugly fit to the rear of that floor section. Keep an eye out for those first few steps that you have the right orientation for that chassis, because the instructions do flip-flop a little bit and it can be a little bit confusing. The rear wheel arches come as a separate piece and just clip in place with a minimum of fuss. The underside of the engine block and exhaust are represented really nicely. However, by drilling out the ends of the pipes with a micro drill, I'm able to add a little more detail to that element. The whole engine and rear axle assembly looked really quite stunning, and I worked out pretty quickly the tolerances and the engineering in this kit were something special. There are a lot of options in this kit, so be sure to understand what they are and how you'd like to include them on your own kit. I decided to pre-drill the holes through the front fenders because I wanted to pose the model with the jerrycan racks. Obviously, there's no need for those holes if you don't want to display them. Moving through the build and everything is so logical, and the fit is as close to perfect as I've seen in a very long time. I did, however, get a little ahead of myself with drilling holes in the driver's sidewall for some of the accessories that would follow. It was an option for one or the other for the horn position, so checking references will serve you prior to this step. I'll later have to fill one of those holes, but I'll come to that in a minute. The sidewalls and the bonnet could then be glued in place. And take a look at that large mating point where those parts connect. At first glance, they look quite unnecessary, but the way the parts snugly connect and hold together in those mating points is really quite flawless. The internal faces of the engine bay are detailed, and the maintenance flap is a separate piece, so it makes me think there may be a version with an engine inbound. Only speculation, of course, but it looks like the framework is all there. The dash assembly has the buttons and dials as you'd expect and is set in place. I'll break this down for painting at some point, so I'm using PVA glue for all of those pieces I want to remove at a later date. I can now glue the wheels in place using a modelling cement. The ability to pop the vinyl wheels off the rims when it comes time to paint means gluing them is an acceptable thing to do at this stage. I also noticed I could position the front wheels somewhat in a turning position, although this is technically not a design of the kit. I highlighted earlier my overenthusiasm when drilling the positions for the horn hole, so that redundant hole required filling with a small amount of Tamiya putty. I've used tape to protect the surrounding plastic, and after a short time I'm able to start the sanding process. I'm using the DSPIAE Reciprocating sander, and it allows me a targeted sanding head and really fast tracks the job. I've arranged for a discount for you through Hobbyist Haven if you wanted to get your hands on one. I'll leave a link in the description down below. With that addressed, all of the mirrors and tools could be attached. You do get a couple of options here again, so check reference material if that was important to you. And just like I did with the seats, I temporarily glue the jerry can racks in place with the PVA glue to be easily removable at the painting stage. The doors were also temporarily glued in place with the white glue, but something worth noting is that the interior faces of those doors present flawlessly. There are no ejector pin marks or anything. This is a small detail that may be lost on many, but it further reinforces my feelings about this kit. Another example of that refinement and fidelity is the butterfly wing nuts on the windscreen surround. Those little details can really set a model apart. It's also worth noting that the thickness of that clear windscreen, it's a lot thinner than a lot of other manufacturers would produce. To say this model caught me by surprise is a complete understatement. And had I not been asked to review it, it's unlikely I would have even crossed paths with it. But now I've built it, I can honestly say this would have to be one of the most perfectly designed and engineered kits I've ever built. Everything just fits perfectly and was an absolute joy to build, full stop. Easily the best kit I've had the pleasure of building in 2024. The Kübelwagen was widely manufactured, but is one of those fringe vehicles that we may only build when we need a filler in a diorama or a vehicle to post some figures around. But this is an absolutely cracking kit that looks like it will be reasonably priced and is truly worth building in its own right. I can't recommend it highly enough. A big thank you to Simon C. Connell for joining in over on the Patreon page. Simon is the latest person to join that community, and he is my latest killer kangaroo. Patreon is free, and once you are there, you can choose the tier that suits you best, and there you will get ad-free videos, additional content, and the chance to connect with me through direct messages. Please give it a go if you're able to, because it really helps me a lot. I'm going to try and sneak one more video in before the Christmas break, so stay tuned for a video to drop next week. Remember guys, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Share it with your family and share it with your friends, and let's be proud of what we do. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Let's go down the list.
My God, that list is getting long.